In the heart of a freezing Alaskan taiga winter, Ethan, a 34-year-old wildlife photographer, quietly stepped across the thick snow, his breath curling into thin streams of mist in the -15-degree air. He had been wandering all morning, weaving through frost-covered conifers, hoping to catch the rare trace of the Canada lynx, the elusive North American, a creature famed for its wariness and unmatched ability to vanish into the white. As the sun rose higher, Ethan edged along a narrow cliff, eyes fixed on faint tracks, ears straining to catch the forest's fragile whispers. Suddenly, a soft growl broke the stillness. Ethan froze. Below, right at the base of the cliff, a female lynx was trapped, her leg caught under a rock, her body streaked with blood, her amber eyes neither threatening nor feral, just quietly watching him. As if pleading for help, Ethan clutched his camera tightly, heart pounding in his chest. He knew if he walked away, she would die. But if he climbed down to help, he could be stepping into unimaginable danger. For one breathless moment, Ethan felt his entire life balanced on the edge of that choice. Ethan took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly as he slowly made his way down the ice-covered cliff. Clutched tightly in his grip was a large pine branch, its rough bark chosen as a makeshift lever. The cold wind whipped past, stinging his face, but Ethan barely noticed. Every sense was locked onto the creature before him, the female Canada lynx, struggling weakly, her hind leg pinned beneath a massive stone, her gray-white fur streaked with deep red blood. Her amber eyes tracked his every move, not snarling, not lunging, just trembling from pain. Ethan clenched his teeth, wedging the branch into the narrow gap beneath the rock, sweat soaking his palms despite the freezing air. He braced himself, pushed hard, the wood groaning under the strain, vibrating violently in his hands. The lynx let out a soft, strained hiss, pulling at her trapped leg, more blood seeping out to stain the white snow. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, gathering every ounce of strength, and pushed once more. A sharp, dry crack split the air. The stone shifted slightly. The lynx yanked her leg again, and suddenly, the rock rolled away, freeing her. Ethan stumbled back, heart pounding, every muscle ready to bolt. But the animal didn't lunge. She staggered upright, hind leg trembling, her gaze still fixed on him. In that suspended moment, the two stood facing each other, surrounded by silent snow, only the sound of ragged animal breaths and the wild, hammering beat of a human heart filling the space. Then, the lynx turned, limping away, disappearing into the frost-covered underbrush. Ethan remained frozen, his hand still gripping the splintered branch. He dropped to his knees, taking a long, shaky breath, his chest tight with the weight of what had just happened. This wasn't a moment to capture on camera. This was a moment where he'd gambled his own safety and been answered not with aggression, but with silent trust. Slowly, Ethan stood, brushing snow from his jacket, eyes locked on the path where the lynx had vanished. Beneath the snow, splashes of blood led deeper into the forest. He swallowed hard. By all logic, he should turn back to camp, call the rangers, leave this place. But instead, his feet began moving forward, following the faint trail of red, drawn into the shadows of the taiga forest where life and instinct entwined, where man and wild were about to weave a story no one would ever believe. The shadows of the taiga forest swallowed Ethan as he wove between towering pine trunks, the thick snow crunching softly under his boots, his breath curling into white clouds in the sub-zero air. The blood trail was thinning, fading across the powdery ground, but Ethan's ears caught the faintest sounds, delicate, almost like the mewling of kittens, drifting from beneath a fallen tree. His heart pounded as he crouched down, gently parting the drooping pine branches. And there, huddled close, were two tiny lynx cubs, their fluffy coats puffed up against the cold, trembling as they pressed tightly together. One licked at a swollen paw, the other curled in, wide, round eyes staring up at Ethan fearful, but neither screeching nor fleeing, too weak to do anything but shiver. A soft sound behind him made Ethan freeze. He spun around, his heart nearly leaping out of his chest. The mother lynx had returned. Her gray-white coat was streaked with blood, her hind leg limping, her amber eyes locked firmly on Ethan. Every instinct screamed at him to back away, to run, but his feet were rooted in the snow. Their eyes met. There was no snarl, no pounce, only a gaze, exhausted, pained, and strangely tinged with a hint of acceptance, a fragile thread of trust. The lynx mother stepped forward, not toward Ethan, but straight to her cubs, lowering her head to gently lick their matted fur, emitting soft, guttural reassurances. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath, a surge of fear and emotion crashing over him like a hidden wave. He realized he was witnessing something almost no one was ever allowed to see, a moment when nature opened its guarded heart, when wildness and the outsider stood together in quiet understanding. Ethan didn't lift his camera, didn't reach for his phone. He simply watched. Minutes passed as the wind hissed through the trees, branches creaked under the weight of ice, and his own heartbeat pounded in his ears. He understood, in that suspended silence, that he was no longer just an observer, no longer just a photographer, but a tiny, fragile part of a much larger picture, one woven not with words or agreements, but with silence and presence. As evening fell, and the cold wind began to bite, Ethan slowly backed away, careful not to disturb the scene. Before leaving the woods, he glanced back one last time. The mother and her cubs, curled together, so small against the vast, white expanse of snow. And Ethan knew that from this day on, his heart was tied forever to a story he would never, could never forget. In the days that followed, Ethan returned to the edge of the taiga forest every morning, without his camera, without his binoculars, simply walking quietly through the thick snow to the same old spot and sitting down. He didn't go deeper, didn't force himself to search. He just settled on the large rock, leaned back against the old tree, and let his eyes wander toward the depths of the forest. And then, one misty morning, as pale sunlight filtered weakly through the branches, he saw them, the lynx mother, appearing with her two cubs, silently crossing the tree line, their gray-white coats shimmering softly in the sunlight. They didn't come closer, of course, but they didn't flee either. Their eyes met his, and there was no growl, no challenge, only a quiet recognition. Ethan sat motionless, watching as the lynx mother taught her cubs how to leap across a frozen stream, how to listen for birdsong, how to sniff the wind and sense the scent of danger. The little ones wobbled, clumsy and playful, sometimes tumbling onto the snow, making Ethan stifle a laugh. One afternoon, he brought a piece of deer meat, placed it far across the snow, and retreated completely. The lynx mother cautiously approached, sniffed, and carried it back to her young. Ethan's heart softened, a strange feeling creeping in, not of taming, not of triumph, but of something delicate, fleeting, balanced on the edge between trust and uncertainty. He understood. He couldn't possess this moment, couldn't capture or claim it. He could only be present, patient, quietly observing. In the following days, Ethan watched the cubs begin to practice hunting small insects, scratching at snowy hollows, perking up at the scurry of mice. Their mother watched from a distance, sometimes glancing at Ethan, sometimes ignoring him entirely, as if acknowledging his silent presence. And one dawn, as the sun rose behind the mountain peaks, Ethan saw the entire lynx family standing atop a snow-covered ridge, their gray-white coats glowing in the light, radiating a fierce, unmatched beauty. He smiled, realizing that nature had given him a lesson no photograph could ever capture: the art of patience, the strength of letting go, and the profound, quiet power of loving without holding on. One evening, just as Ethan was about to leave the forest's edge, a sharp, echoing crack shattered the snowy silence, a gunshot. His heart seized. It wasn't thunder, not a falling tree. Ethan sprinted toward the sound, snow tearing at his pant legs, wind screaming past his ears. Beneath the dense pines, he spotted unfamiliar footprints, large, heavy, dragging not rangers, not hikers, poachers. He ran along the trail, his eyes catching small flecks of blood dotted across the snow. Near a dense thicket, An old iron trap lay open, blood still fresh. Ethan crouched, heart hammering gray fur. Lynx. He held his breath, lifted his gaze, and just then, the lynx mother emerged, limping on her front paw, eyes blazing. She didn't snarl, didn't attack Ethan, but fixed her sharp gaze straight into the woods, where the human tracks led. Ethan understood instantly. One of the cubs had been taken. Without hesitation, he followed the trail, his pulse pounding, fear and determination tangled in his chest. In the distance, laughter, the growl of an engine, shadows flickering through thin mist. Ethan slipped down a slope, crashing hard against rock, but pushed himself up, running on. The taiga forest around him was no longer a romantic place for capturing moments. Now it was a battlefield, where nature and man clashed in a brutal, uneven fight. Ethan saw the lynx mother surge from the underbrush, letting out a bone-chilling roar that split the frozen air. The poachers cursed, raising weapons. Ethan shouted, charging forward, not stopping to think. In a chaotic instant, claws scraping metal, human screams, a cub trembling, writhing inside the sprung trap. Ethan fell to his knees, hands flying to release it. Behind him, the lynx mother stood tall, chest heaving, eyes burning. When the cub was finally freed, all three, the man, the mother, the young, fell into a breathless, frozen moment, as if realizing they had just fought side by side against a common enemy, protecting something more precious than survival itself, freedom. After that chaotic night, Ethan sat alone beside a small campfire near his tent. Outside, snow drifted softly, each flake as delicate as a breath. But inside his chest, the real storm was only beginning. The rangers had arrived, bringing with them a clear proposal: relocate the Lynx family to a closed sanctuary where they'd be safe from poachers. On paper, it was the perfect solution: medical care, steady food, no more threats. But Ethan stared into the darkened woods, where the lynx mother huddled close to her two cubs, her amber eyes flickering in the firelight. He knew, after everything they had fought for, was it truly fair for humans to strip away their freedom, even under the banner of protection? That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He walked the perimeter, erasing tracks, dismantling any remaining traps, burying wire deep, clearing everything he could to return the forest to its raw, untamed state. He knew he couldn't save the whole world, but maybe, just maybe, he could carve out a small, safe corner where this mother and her cubs could live true to their nature. The next morning, when the rangers returned and asked, "Are you sure? They might not survive the next winter," Ethan gave a tired, hoarse laugh and whispered, "They might not. But if we cage them, they'll stop being lynx." As the forest swallowed the silhouettes of the three moving away, Ethan stood frozen for a long time. He knew his choice wasn't perfect, wasn't without risk, but it was the only one he could live with in good conscience. A hard choice, but the right one. Several weeks later, as the last cold winds of the season swept fiercely through the taiga forest, Ethan returned to the old path where his footprints once overlapped with the lynx's during the stormy days. That day, the sky was crystal clear, sunlight slanting through the pine branches, casting a shimmering glow on the patches of snow still clinging to the ground. Ethan stood on the familiar mound, his heart restless but careful not to hope too much. And then, like a quiet miracle, a silver-gray shape emerged from the distant trees. The lynx mother, stronger than ever, her legs steady, her coat glowing under the sun. Beside her, two cubs now grown, their bodies sleek, eyes bright with curiosity and life. Ethan held his breath, not daring to move. In that moment, all sounds seemed to vanish. There was only the faint whisper of the wind, the pounding of his heart, and the connection of their gazes across the vast, open space. The lynx mother stood still for a long time, her deep amber eyes locked onto Ethan's. No call, no approach, no need for thanks. Just one long, silent look that said everything. Then she turned, leading her cubs through the forest, disappearing behind the curtain of branches and mist. Ethan remained motionless, his eyes stinging with emotion. He knew this reunion carried no promise of another meeting, no ties, no possession. It was simply a gentle reminder that sometimes the deepest connection between human and wild comes from silence and from letting each other be free. The story of Ethan and the Lynx family quickly spread through the small community near the taiga forest. Not through noisy media or flashy headlines, but through quiet tales told beside fireplaces, through the whispers of old rangers, of hunters who had laid down their guns, of children mesmerized by stories of the wild. Children began to visit the conservation center where Ethan worked, their wide eyes fixed on him as he spoke of that early morning, of the amber eyes, of the moment he first realized a wild creature could place its trust in him. Clara, his colleague and close friend, often sat nearby, smiling softly and adding gentle reminders. We don't save nature to tame it. We save it so it can remain free. Lucas, the old, taciturn ranger, finally set to writing a small journal, not a heavy research book, but simple little stories about patience, about the moments he had witnessed when nature revealed its unexpected tenderness. Ethan, too, quietly worked on his own small book, not to recount achievements, but to share what he had learned. That compassion does not end at the moment you save a lynx. It spreads. It grows. As each person learns to listen to nature with their whole heart. One afternoon, while tidying his desk, Ethan found a child's drawing, clumsy but filled with warmth. A man standing among trees, and in the distance, 3 lynx figures, with a wobbly sentence written underneath. Thank you for letting that family go home. Ethan smiled, hanging the picture in the window. His heart warmed in a way he couldn't quite explain. He knew the true legacy wasn't in fame, wasn't in awards, but lived inside each small heart that would grow up filled with love for the wild. Many years later, Ethan still chose to remain in the taiga forest, quietly and steadfastly continuing his conservation work. He was no longer the young wildlife photographer who once chased after rare shots. He had become a patient observer, living in tune with the forest's breath, learning to listen to the wind, the footfalls of wild creatures, the subtlest changes on the snowy ground. One early summer morning, as sunlight slanted through the pines, Ethan walked the familiar trail, the path that had once been the thread between him and the Lynx family. Suddenly, he stopped. In the dew-soaked grass were faint, fresh tracks, lynx tracks, small but firm, heading toward the forest edge. Ethan crouched down, gently placed his hand over the imprint, and felt a surge of emotion rise in his chest, impossible to name. He didn't need a clear encounter, didn't need a recognizing gaze. It was enough to know that out there, somewhere, the lynx still lived, still roamed free, still remained itself. As Ethan rose, a soft breeze drifted past, carrying the scent of young grass, damp earth, and deep forest. He inhaled deeply, smiling, feeling his heart settle into peace. He knew he had never saved nature, nor owned it. He was merely someone chosen to step in, to witness, to learn how to love without holding on. On his way back, Ethan turned once more to look at the misty forest canopy. In his heart, the image of that mother lynx's amber eyes, proud stance, faint scar on her leg lived on, a gentle reminder. The greatest love is to let what you cherish soar free.